Hey, welcome back to Left Hook. This is a segment that I'd like to call Between the Rounds, where I'm going to drill down a little deeper on something that we covered in our main show, or I'm going to follow up on something that we covered there. So I'm going to dive right into it. So in the main show, we covered the illegal deportation of migrants that the Trump administration is doing. Hundreds of people who are being taken without any due process at all and being sent either back to their own countries of origin or to a El Salvador work prison, one of the most notorious prisons in the world. And I wanted to get to one case specifically. I think this is very illustrative of the overall problem, and it's one of the most egregious problems that the Trump administration has done. So a man named Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, a man from Maryland. He's a father, husband. He's a migrant from El Salvador, with a wife who's a citizen and a child who is also a citizen and who is autistic. He was taken by ICE agents and was sent to El Salvador. Now, his case is particularly egregious because Mr. Garcia came here whenever he was a 16-year-old boy, and he was fleeing gang violence in El Salvador. He came here, and at one point he was arrested by the police. Well, not even really arrested, just taken into custody briefly. And a judge actually found the danger of him being sent back to El Salvador and suffering from gang violence was so great that Mr. Garcia was given a stay by that judge to prevent him from being sent back to El Salvador because it was so dangerous for him. Well, the Trump administration did it anyway. So the Trump administration concedes now that the Maryland father from El Salvador was mistakenly deported and sent to the mega prison. So in a court filing this past Monday, they admitted that they had no reason to send him back. It was what they're calling an administrative error. This guy's life has been destroyed because of an administrative error. So I think the media has been covering this pretty extensively, obviously, because it's such a horrible, egregious crime. I'd like to refer back to this segment from Chris Hayes, who I don't love MSNBC, but he's probably the best guy on the network as far as I can see. The most honest, the most critical, and honestly, the most leftward leaning out of all their commentators. So take a listen to this real quick and we'll comment on the way.
Like when they sent a father from Maryland with protected legal status to that same El Salvadorian prison. That man's name is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Now, he came to the U.S. from El Salvador in 2011. He's a legal resident who has a 2019 court order that prevented him from being sent back to his home country. The White House has provided no credible evidence he's in a gang. His lawyers deny he has any gang affiliation. Yesterday, the administration actually admitted in court papers that, quote, on March 15th, although ICE was aware of his protection from removal to El Salvador, Abrego Garcia was removed to El Salvador because of an administrative error.
So let that sink in. Not only did they not have any evidence that he was in a gang, not only was he here legally, but he actually had an administrative order keeping him from being removed, and they did it anyway. If you need any more proof that they're just doing whatever the hell they want, regardless of people's rights, regardless of any due process, regardless of the Constitution itself, this case just proves it blatantly, and it gets worse.
Administrative error that took this man away from his home, Maryland, where he lives with his wife and 3 children, including a 5-year-old child who's an American citizen who is autistic and intellectually disabled. Simon Sandoval Moshenberg is the attorney representing that Maryland father, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and he joins me now. It's good to have you on the program. First, I want to just ask, we've all seen these sort of horrific images of this prison. We've read reporting about it. Are you able to contact your client? Is there any avenue to even talk to him down there?
No. Unfortunately, prisoners in the notorious Secot prison are held incommunicado. It really is a black hole.
I think from the photos that you can see that they're showing here, as well as the fact that this lawyer can't even get in touch with his own client, tells you a whole lot about how illegal this prison is. Like how this is worse than any prison in America. And we've got some pretty shitty prisons, but this is worse than anything here. They specifically sent these people here so that they could violate their human rights.
So is there any way to like talk to the El Salvadoran authorities? Is there any pathway or route when a mistake has been made, as the government has now admitted, for any kind of process to get people out of that place?
We believe that if the government of the United States simply made a good faith request to the government of El Salvador to give him back, I expect that would be successful. Right now, it appears that the government...
You would expect that to be successful. I want you to keep in mind that this facility is a place that the Trump administration has contracted with, and are paying them $6 million to house these migrants that they're sending there without due process. So they are employed by us. They've been claiming that this is like that they're not in DHS or immigration's hands anymore because they're in this prison. That's not true. There is no reason to think that they are not still in DHS custody whenever DHS is contracting the housing of these people to the El Salvadorian government. The next thing I want to talk to you about is judges. They're pretty darn sure that this isn't legal either, and the judge in this case ordered Mr. Garcia to be returned. He's ordering the government to do so. Federal judge, Judge Paula Zenas. Let me pull this up here. So that's Mr. Garcia, by the way. And federal judge in Maryland on Friday, so that was a couple days ago, granted the preliminary injunction that ordered the government to facilitate the return of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia. And I'm quoting here, "I'm going to grant the motion for preliminary injunction I've reviewed, and I'll read this word for word so there is no dispute that the oral order is the written order." Because there's been the Trump administration, ICE have tried to play a little bit of chicanery with whether something was a written order or an oral order from the bench, and trying to say that one isn't valid where the other is, and that's why they didn't stop some planes a while back. They're really, really just using everything they can to try to keep doing this. So U.S. Judge Paula Zenas on Friday's hearing, making a reference to the recent Alien Enemies Act court case in which the government failed to carry out another judge's oral order. "This was an illegal act," Zenas said of Garcia's deportation. "The two defendants," which meaning the lawyers for the government, "are hereby ordered to facilitate and return of the plaintiff, Kilmar, to the United States no later than 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 7th. It is currently almost 1 o'clock on April 6th right now as I'm filming this. So they've got about a day and a half to get that done. Right here. So Garcia was sent to El Salvador as part of Trump's administration's described as a $6 million deal with Salvadorian authorities in which they would house deported migrants in exchange for payment. At Friday's hearing, however, the Justice Department attorney denied there was such a contract. And the judge continues, "The way I see the record, though, is that there is an agreement between your clients in El Salvador where your clients are paying upward of $6 million to house individuals. There's nothing to suggest they're still not in the custody of DHS and immigration." That is key, I think, to what they're talking about here, because every time we have been talking about these migrants who are illegally taken out of the country and sent to this prison, they claim, well, they're gone. We can't get them back. That is complete bullshit. Of course they can get them back. All they have to do is ask. They are contracting with this government to get this done. They can get these people back. They don't want to. And there's a really telling reason, I think, and I think a lot of people agree with this, why they don't want them back. They don't want them to come back and tell their stories. Even people they send there mistakenly that have the absolutely 100% provably have the right to come back, and I'm sure there are hundreds of others that are in that exact same boat, There are probably it's only a small percentage of these people that are actually criminals that actually deserve to be sent off to prison itself. Nobody deserves to get sent to this prison because it's a internment camp. It's a gulag, basically. But they don't want these people to come back and tell the American people what it's like there. They don't want them doing interviews with the media, with guys like Chris Hayes or other outlets, talking about how horrific the conditions are, how nobody deserves to be housed this way, to give the real deets on what's going on. So that is why they don't want these people back. I can tell you that with 100% certainty in my mind. I don't think there's any arguing with that. So one last thing in the way that they're vilifying these people. A few days ago, a guy named John Favreau, who is one of the Pod Save America guys, if you ever watch that, he goes online and he comments, any comment about the story of Mr. Garcia. He says, any comment on this, Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk? You admitted to accidentally sending an innocent father from Maryland to a torture dungeon in El Salvador, and you refused to do anything about it. Vance comes back at that and he says, he's such a scumbag. My comment is that according to the court document you apparently didn't read, he was a convicted MS-13 gang member with no legal right to be here. My further the indignation here is incredible, this part. My further comment is that it's gross to get fired up about gang members getting deported while ignoring citizens they victimize. Complete and utter horseshit. There is no proof at all that this guy was part of MS-13 or any gang for that matter. In fact, the judge found the lack of evidence so telling that he found that the danger to this guy of getting sent back by MS-13 was credible enough to keep him in the country, to put an order in place to do so. PolitiFact chose this as being completely false. You can see that right there. There's no truth to this at all. Vance knows that. They all know it. They don't care. It's the harm is the point. It's not a bug, it's a feature. They want to show that they're punishing the people that they told the American people, their base, their MAGA base, were their enemies. They told them that these guys were dangerous, and now they're cleaning up the streets, doing something about it, supposedly. That's the point. That's what we need to really, truly understand, is that not only is this is intentional, and it gives them, the further they can expand this power, the more people they can affect with it. And that's really the point that I'm making with this, is that if they can do this to this guy, they can do it to anybody. Anybody. To me, to you, anybody. So, that's where we live now. But the other thing I want to talk about today is how we're fighting back. This is not bad, all bad today. So yesterday there were scheduled protests. A group called Hands Off, which is made up of several different liberal groups, some leftist groups, unions, etc. Created this and organized this Hands Off protest day. Well, it was a success, as if to prove how many people understand how bad things are right now. Complete success. There were over 1,300 rallies of different sizes that took place on Saturday. You can see the crowds here in this picture. This was Washington, D.C., where the organizers say that there were over 100,000 people at this rally. That's just one of the places where the rally took place. There were others all over the country. Like I say, Boston had a large one where the Dropkick Murphys actually performed, which was kind of cool. I saw some video on that. It's pretty neat. Yeah, so Boston, Washington, D.C., New York, even places outside of the United States had these protests, and we had 3 of them here in St. Charles. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the people who came out to these protests. I actually went out and visited these. I interviewed a few folks, not on camera obviously, but I talked to a few folks, so check it out. It was a good vibe. So we're out here at Highway 70 in Zumwalt, where the hands-off protest is happening right now. People are holding signs up, showing the highway, what they think about what's going on in the country right now. Pretty darn good turnout here. Look at this. This is such a great turnout. This is awesome. And then, much to my surprise, on my way back from the protest out in St. Charles, I'm now in St. Peter's, and there's another protest. I didn't even know about this one. And a very, very nice turnout for this one too. And a lot of support, as you can hear from the honking horns. There are a lot of people who are sick of this. A lot of people. So that one I had no idea was going to happen. Obviously, that's right around the corner from where I live. It's fantastic that it was that close, and the rain held out long enough for at least an hour or two of those people out there expressing their beliefs and their disgust at what's happening right now. As I said, I talked to a few people there. There was mostly in the parking lot because they didn't want to really interrupt the crowd up on the bridge, but I talked to a fellow named Drew who said he was out there because he thought it was important to show solidarity and was concerned about how the illegal moves by Trump or how illegal the Trump's moves are, and really about him cutting jobs. I spoke to an older couple, a fellow named Roger and his wife Sue. They were also concerned about the illegal actions and about the slide into fascism. That was what he had really talked about. Roger's father, he said, had fought in World War II, and that he would be sickened by the things that the current U.S. government is doing. They were also very concerned about cuts to the VA and Social Security. Another woman that I talked to just said it was time to show we weren't going to take it and that our voices needed to be heard. And just to give you a sense, I mean, we all kind of know this. If you're tuning into this channel, you probably already know, but I compiled just a short list. This is by no means comprehensive of the bad shit that Trump and Musk have done or are trying to do since he got into office, which hard to believe it's only been like 2.5 months, man. Seems like it's been a year since he took the oath. But I mean, they reversed on day one. They reversed the cap on drug prices, so people have to pay more for drugs. Tried to end birthright citizenship, closed Social Security offices, and eliminated the phone option so that grandmas got to haul her butt into an actual office, and the local office may not even be open anymore. She might have to go to another town or another area just to get her benefits. If there's any kind of an issue at all, they used to be able to just call. And the people who can still just call in certain places, because the personnel has been cut and the offices have been closed, they're having a hell of a time getting a hold of anybody. They're sitting on hold for hours. He pulled out of the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Agreement, just the beginning of his issues that he's trying to start with the rest of the world. He erased transgender mention of people from the government and ended all DEIA programs the government was associated with. Froze money to U.S. aid, which is our strongest humanitarian aid organization the government has. It's the main tool for soft power throughout the world and just helps tons and tons of people throughout the world. He, of course, pardoned hundreds of violent January 6 offenders who were in prison and let them back out on the streets. So much for the party of law and order. He is working on abolishing the Department of Education, including drastically recutting funds for Pell Grants and student loans, making it that much more difficult for people who need that help to go to college to get it. Obviously, we talked about earlier, put quotas on deportation of migrants, made a deal with the right-wing leader of El Salvador to send some of them there. He kneecapped unions by firing key leaders at the National Labor Relations Board, so that business there at the NLRB is just about ground to a halt. He's repeatedly called for the annexing of Canada, Greenland, Panama Canal, started a trade war, obviously, with at first Canada and Mexico, and now after he just announced his tariffs this Friday that he was putting on everything, which we'll talk about that in an upcoming full show. He's started a trade war that's going to make everything more expensive for everybody here in the United States. And all they can say is just, we're going to have to tough it out. Because, of course, that's what they would say. Claimed that DEI caused a fatal airplane crash in D.C. and then fired hundreds of Department of Transportation employees directly afterwards. Speaking of that, he's fired over 60,000 government employees, including people at the VA, at the FTC, at the FDA, in the Forestry Department, so people who administrate our parks. All of these things, because they say it's government waste. We all know that that's not the case here. Part of me honestly suspects the reason why they're firing everybody is so that they can loosen up the job market and make, unemployment's been record low for a couple of years now under the old administration, under Biden's administration, and it's been, employers have had to give more rights and better pay to the people that they're hiring because they're not competing as much with each other. The employers are competing with each other for employees, not employees competing to get jobs. So they've had to give more advantageous benefits and pay whenever they have people in. And now that they're firing all these people, well, they're just loosening up the job market. Now they'll make the little guy have to compete with each other because there's more unemployed people. That just makes things easier for the wealthy people who, run the show under Trump's administration. But these protests really do give me hope. I love that we had people out here in our local area. We had, like I say, 3 different protests going on. One out of T.R. Hughes, one on Zumboldt, and then one right here in St. Peter's. And for all I know, there might have been another one close by. St. Louis had a bunch of them. It was really fantastic. So great to see. We're standing up for ourselves. We got to keep this going. So that's it for Between the Rounds. Thanks for tuning in. Check out our regular show. It'll be coming up soon. And smash that subscribe to it if you would. Thanks.